I am Blaine Wellington, 32 years old, and I own one of the fastest-growing luxury hotel chains in America. My parents never thought I would amount to anything in the hospitality industry. They called it a waste of potential. Last week, they planned their big family reunion at what they thought was an exclusive five-star hotel. What they didn't know was that I bought that property 6 months ago. When they texted, "You're not welcome in our five-star hotel," I simply smiled. If you're watching this video right now, hit that like button, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to see how their keycards mysteriously stopped working at midnight. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut meant living in a world of old money country clubs and unspoken social hierarchies. Our family home was a sprawling colonial with 6 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a perfectly manicured lawn, and staff who maintained it all. My father, Richard Wellington, was a banking executive who specialized in mergers and acquisitions. He wore custom-tailored suits, played golf with senators, and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his importance. My mother, Julia, came from a lesser family by Greenwich standards, which meant she worked twice as hard to climb the social ladder, planning charity galas and judging anyone who failed to meet her exacting standards. I was their greatest disappointment. From an early age, I showed little interest in the things that mattered to them. While they wanted me to excel at tennis and join the junior league, I was fascinated by the inner workings of the hotels we visited on vacation. I would ask the concierge questions, watch the housekeeping staff work their magic, and admire the managers who seemed to solve problems before they even happened. "Stop bothering the help," Blaine, my mother would hiss, pulling me away. "They are paid to be nice to you. They are not your friends." At family gatherings, my cousins were paraded around like show ponies. "Melissa just got into Yale," my aunt would announce. Early decision, of course. My parents would smile tightly, then later in the car, I would hear about how I needed to work harder, focus more, be better. "The Wellington name means something," my father would say, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You need to uphold our reputation." When I turned 16, I applied for a summer internship at the Harbor Inn, a small boutique hotel in our town. My parents were furious when I told them at dinner. A hotel, working with tourists and cleaning up after strangers. My mother put down her fork, her salmon untouched. "Absolutely not." "It's not cleaning," I tried to explain. "It's a management internship. I'd be learning about operations, customer service, marketing." My father laughed, actually laughed. "Hospitality is just glorified servitude, Blaine. Wellingtons don't serve. They are served." I took the internship anyway. Every morning that summer, I woke up at 5:30, put on the hotel's standard black pants and white button-down shirt, and rode my bike 4 miles to work before my parents woke up. I would return home after dinner service exhausted but exhilarated. At the Harbor Inn, Mrs. Kaplan, the owner, actually listened to my ideas. When I suggested a personalized welcome note for repeat guests, she implemented it immediately. When I created a new filing system for reservation management, she praised me in front of the entire staff. For the first time in my life, I felt valued for my brain and my work ethic, not criticized for failing to be someone else. My mother found my uniform in the laundry after 3 weeks. "This stops now," she said, throwing the black pants at me. "Your father and I have arranged a proper internship at Richard's Bank. You start Monday." "I'm not quitting," I told her. Her eyes narrowed. "You look terrible, you know. The bags under your eyes, your hands getting rough from cleaning. No boy from a good family will want to date you looking like the help." That was my mother's favorite tactic. When appeals to family loyalty didn't work, she attacked my appearance, my social standing, my future prospects for marriage. Never mind that it was the 21st century. In her world, a woman's greatest achievement was still marrying well. The defining moment of my childhood came during my high school graduation. I was valedictorian, set to give a speech I had worked on for weeks. My parents had promised to be there, sitting in the front row, finally proud of something I had accomplished. They never showed up. I learned later they had accepted a last-minute invitation to a yacht party hosted by a potential client. "Business opportunities don't wait for ceremonies," Blaine, my father, explained when I confronted him. "There will be other milestones." That night I decided there would indeed be other milestones in my life, but they might not be around to see them. Cornell University's hotel administration program was my dream. When the thick acceptance packet arrived in the mail, I felt a surge of validation that years of criticism had nearly extinguished. I ran to my father's study letter in hand, hope foolishly bubbling up that this prestigious acceptance might finally earn their approval. Cornell. My father glanced at the letter. Well, at least it's Ivy League. It's the best hospitality program in the country, I said. He leaned back in his leather chair. Hospitality? Right. He sighed heavily. Blaine, we're not paying for you to get a degree in being a glorified maid. If you want to waste your education, you can waste your own money. True to his word, my parents refused to contribute a single dollar toward my education. While my high school classmates posted photos of parents helping them move into freshman dorms, I took a Greyhound bus to Ithaca with 2 suitcases and the savings from my hotel internship. I worked 3 jobs my first semester: mornings at the campus, coffee shop afternoons at the library, and weekends at a local hotel. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, studied between shifts, and still maintained a 4-point GPA. While other students joined clubs and went to parties, I was calculating how many hours I needed to work to afford next semester's books. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Hamilton. She noticed me falling asleep during her hotel management lecture, not because the material was boring, but because I had worked a double shift the night before. Instead of embarrassing me, she asked me to stay after class. You have a natural talent for this industry, she told me, but you're going to burn out before graduation at this pace. Professor Hamilton became my mentor. She helped me apply for scholarships, connected me with paid research opportunities, and most importantly, believed in my vision for the future of hospitality. Under her guidance, I developed a hotel management software system for my senior project. It integrated reservation systems, staff scheduling, inventory management, and guest profiles in a way that could dramatically reduce overhead while improving guest experiences. The project won first place in the National Hospitality Innovation Competition. The ceremony was held in New York City, and to my surprise, my parents attended. It was the first time I had seen them in over a year. We wouldn't miss it, my mother said, air kissing both my cheeks. Her eyes scanned my simple black dress, clearly finding it lacking. Though you might have worn something more appropriate for such an important industry event. During the reception afterward, I overheard my father talking to one of the judges. We always knew Blaine had this kind of potential, he said smoothly. We encouraged her interest in hospitality from an early age, took her to the finest hotels in Europe to study their operations. I stood frozen champagne flute in hand, listening to him rewrite our family history. My mother joined in, claiming they had connections with several luxury hotel brands who were just waiting to hire me upon graduation. Later that night in my hotel room, they laid out their vision for my future. Preston Blackwood's father owns Blackwood Resorts, my mother said excitedly. He's single Harvard Business School and would be perfect for you. We've arranged a dinner next month. I'm not interested in being set up, I said. Don't be difficult, Blaine, my father cut in. The Blackwoods could open doors for you that would take decades to access on your own. All you need to do is be charming, feminine, and let your software project impress them. Let my project impress them, I repeated. You mean the project you refused to support? The one you called a waste of time? The one I created while working 3 jobs because you cut me off? My mother's expression hardened. We were teaching you responsibility. No, I said, my voice shaking. You were punishing me for not being who you wanted me to be. Enough dramatics, my father snapped. This is your opportunity to rejoin the family properly. The Blackwoods are exactly the kind of connection you need. Preston could help you turn that little software project into a real business. That was when I realized nothing would ever change. No achievement would ever be mine in their eyes. Any success I had would be because of them, their connections, their family name. And any failure would be because I had stubbornly refused their help. I'm going to build my own business, I said quietly. Without the Blackwoods, without your connections, without the Wellington name. My father's face turned red. Then you'll do it without our support, financial or otherwise. We've been patient with your rebellion, my mother added, but it's time to grow up and accept your place in this family. And what place is that, I asked. The place of a daughter who respects her parents' guidance, my father answered, who understands that we know what's best for your future. I looked at these 2 people, my parents, who had never once asked me what I wanted, what made me happy, what dreams I had for my own life. I think I'll find my own place, I said. I walked out of that hotel room, knowing I was walking away from my family, my safety net, and the Wellington name. I cried the entire drive back to Ithaca, but by morning my resolve had hardened into determination. I would succeed not to prove them wrong, but to prove to myself that I was right to believe in my own vision. The day after graduation, I packed everything I owned into my 10-year-old Honda Civic and drove to Chicago with exactly $2,300 to my name. Why Chicago? It was far enough from Connecticut to feel like a fresh start, big enough to have opportunities, and most importantly, not New York, where my father's banking connections might interfere with my plans. I found an apartment in Rogers Park, a tiny studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom, where the shower, toilet, and sink occupied the same 4 square feet of space. The rent took nearly half my savings, but I needed an address to put on job applications. I spent the next 2 weeks applying to every hotel in the city, from luxury downtown properties to airport budget chains. The Palmer Grand Hotel finally hired me as a front desk agent on the overnight shift. The manager, Derek, had worked his way up from bellhop and recognized the hunger in my eyes. The pay was terrible, the hours worse, but I had my foot in the door. Hospitality is about solving problems before guests know they have them, Derek told me during training. The best employees anticipate, they don't just react. I took that philosophy to heart, working my shift at the Palmer Grand from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, then spending my days refining my management software. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, sleeping maybe 4 hours between coding sessions. My tiny apartment filled with notes, diagrams, and empty energy drink cans. 3 months into my job, disaster struck the Palmer Grand. A pipe burst on the 12th floor at 2 in the morning, flooding 10 rooms where a wedding party was staying. The manager on duty panicked and disappeared to the back office. As water cascaded down hallways and angry guests in pajamas demanded solutions, I stepped in. I need rooms at sister properties immediately, I told the call center, and transportation to get them there. I need maintenance to shut off the water to the east wing, I instructed the security guard. I need every available housekeeper called in, I told the overnight supervisor. As I coordinated the emergency response, I noticed a man in a rumpled suit watching me from the lobby. When the immediate crisis had been contained, he approached the front desk. "That was impressive problem solving," he said, extending his hand. "Zach Turner." I shook it, exhausted. "Blaine Wellington. Just doing my job." "No," he said with a slight smile. "Your job was to call a manager. You did about 5 managers' jobs simultaneously." He slid a business card across the counter. "I'm opening a consulting firm for the hospitality industry. I think we should talk." That meeting with Zach changed everything. He had 10 years of experience in hotel operations, but no technical expertise. I had the software, but no industry connections. Within a month, we became business partners, working nights and weekends to perfect my management system while keeping our day jobs. We pitched to 27 investors in 6 months. 25 said no immediately. One strung us along for weeks before ghosting us. The 27th, a woman named Sophia Lynn, who had made her fortune in real estate, listened to our entire presentation without expression. "Your software is innovative," she said when we finished, "but untested. I don't invest in theories." My heart sank. Another rejection. "However," she continued, "I recently acquired a failing boutique hotel in Wicker Park. It's losing money every month. If your system can turn it around in 6 months, I'll fund your seed round." It wasn't an investment, but it was an opportunity. Zach and I quit our jobs the next day and moved into the hotel's employee, housing a converted storage room with 2 cots. We worked around the clock, implementing my software, retraining staff, overhauling operations. I lived and breathed that hotel, knowing this was our one chance. 4 months later, occupancy had increased by 60%. Staff turnover dropped from 30% to 5%. Guest satisfaction scores doubled. The hotel wasn't just profitable, it was becoming a destination. Sophia was impressed enough to introduce us to her investment group. We secured $1 million in funding, enough to purchase the hotel outright and begin developing the next version of the software. We renamed the property Luminary Hotel, the first in what I hoped would be many. That first year was the hardest of my life. I worked 80-hour weeks, slept on a couch in my office more often than my apartment, and poured every cent back into the business. I missed meals, birthdays, holidays. I lost touch with college friends. I dated exactly 0 people. My life became the hotel and the dream of what it could become. The sacrifice paid off. Luminary Hotels' profit margins were 20% above industry average. We implemented a profit-sharing program for employees, resulting in the lowest turnover rates in Chicago. Travel bloggers began featuring us, praising our personalized service and innovative amenities. By the end of year 1, we had offers to purchase the property for triple our investment. Instead, we leveraged that interest to secure funding for a second location. 5 years after opening the first Luminary Hotel, our portfolio had grown to 12 properties across the Midwest. We had expanded beyond boutique hotels to include business centers in Detroit and Minneapolis, a lakefront resort in Wisconsin, and a converted historical landmark in St. Louis. Each property operated on my management software, now called LuminOS, which had become a product we licensed to other hotel groups. I had developed a management philosophy centered around what I called the Luminary Principle. Every person who walks through our doors, whether guest or employee, should leave feeling brighter than when they arrived. This translated to industry-leading wages for staff, generous benefits, including continuing education, and a culture where ideas were valued regardless of position. Housekeepers could suggest menu items. Bellhops could propose marketing strategies. Front desk agents could design room layouts. The result was a workforce so loyal and engaged that when larger chains attempted to poach our talent with higher salaries, almost no one left. Our guests noticed the difference, with many becoming such devoted regulars that they would plan trips specifically around Luminary locations. As our reputation grew, so did industry recognition. I was named Hotelier of the Year by Hospitality Magazine. Our sustainability initiatives won environmental awards. Our accessibility features became a case study at Cornell. But the achievement that meant the most to me was being ranked in the top 10 places to work for 5 consecutive years. My role had evolved from hands-on manager to strategic visionary. Zach oversaw daily operations as Chief Operating Officer, while I focused on growth as Chief Executive Officer. We had over 2,000 employees, annual revenue exceeding $100 million, and brand recognition that companies twice our size envied. Through it all, I kept my identity relatively private. As CEO of Luminary Holdings, the parent company, I used my middle name professionally, Blaine Morgan. The Wellington name remained in my past, a deliberate choice to build my reputation on merit rather than family connections. Few people outside our executive team knew my full story, and I preferred it that way. My parents remained oblivious to my success. The few times my mother called over the years, usually around the holidays, she asked the same questions. Are you still playing with those little hotels? When are you going to get a real job with a future? Have you met anyone from a good family yet? Their annual Christmas card mentioned only my brother Thomas's accomplishments, his promotion at my father's bank, his marriage to a socialite from Boston, the birth of his children. I was at most a footnote. Blaine continues her work in Chicago. Despite external success, I felt an emptiness I couldn't quite fill. I had proven myself professionally beyond what even I had imagined possible. I had financial security, respect from my peers, and a company culture I was proud of. But family events still triggered the old feelings of inadequacy, the sense that no achievement would ever be enough. I made attempts to reconnect over the years. I sent gifts for birthdays and anniversaries. I called on holidays. I even invited them to Chicago, offering to put them up at our flagship property without revealing my ownership. Each overture was met with conditions. We'll visit when you're ready to seriously discuss your future. We'd love to see you if you're bringing someone special to introduce us to. Your brother is having a baby shower that weekend. That's a real priority. The message was clear: my life choices were still unacceptable. My success was still insufficient. My existence was still secondary to their expectations. Thomas was different. My younger brother had followed the path laid out for him, joining our father's bank after Wharton, marrying appropriately, producing grandchildren on schedule. But occasionally he would call me late at night after a few drinks. I envy you, Blaine, he confessed during one such call. You broke free, created something that's actually yours. His voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes I hate my life. Everything I have was handed to me, or chosen for me. You could change things, I suggested. He laughed bitterly. Too late for that. Too many people depending on me to be exactly who I am. There was a long pause. I read about your company, you know. The articles don't connect you to the Wellington name, but I knew it was you. What you've built is incredible. That conversation stayed with me. If Thomas knew about my success, did my parents? Did they secretly follow my career while publicly dismissing it? Or was Thomas the only one who had bothered to look beyond their narrow definition of achievement? The family group chat had been quiet for months when suddenly it exploded with messages about my grandmother's upcoming 90th birthday. Grandmother Wellington was the family matriarch, the one person who had always shown me unconditional love. Despite my complicated relationship with my parents, I maintained contact with her through letters and occasional visits when I knew my parents would be traveling. "We're planning a grand celebration for Mother's birthday," my father announced in the chat. "The entire family will gather at the Wellington Hotel in downtown Chicago the weekend of June 10th. No excuses for absences." I stared at my phone in disbelief. The Wellington Hotel, I almost laughed out loud. 6 months earlier, Luminary Holdings had acquired the Preston Hotel Group, a collection of 5 luxury properties across the country. We had kept the original names during the transition period while we assessed each property's unique character. One of those properties was indeed in downtown Chicago, a stately historic hotel that had once been called the Wellington, though it had no connection to our family. The irony was almost too perfect. My parents had chosen my hotel for their grand family reunion without having any idea. "I've booked the presidential suite for your mother and me," my father continued in the group chat. "Thomas and Catherine will take the executive suite. Blaine, I assume you'll want a standard room." My mother chimed in. "We've arranged for VIP treatment for the whole family. The manager has assured us of absolute discretion and exceptional service." I wondered which manager had made these promises. Jason Miller was the current GM, a hospitality veteran I had personally hired during the acquisition. He was brilliant with guests but would never guarantee special treatment without consulting ownership, meaning me. As the planning continued in the group chat, my parents' messages grew increasingly detailed about their expectations. "We require a private dining room for Friday night. The presidential suite must be stocked with Veuve Clicquot, not Moet. The Wellington family has certain standards that must be met." I sat with my phone torn between amusement and anxiety. Should I tell them would revealing myself as the owner finally earn their respect, or would they find some way to diminish this achievement too? And what about the family reunion? If I attended without disclosing my position, I would be living a lie. If I revealed the truth, I might derail my grandmother's celebration with family drama. I decided to consult my therapist, Dr. Rachel Barnes, whom I had been seeing for the past 3 years to work through my family issues. "What do you really want from this situation, Blaine?" she asked during our session. I considered the question carefully. I want to attend my grandmother's birthday without conflict. I want to maintain my boundaries with my parents. And honestly, part of me wants them to see me as successful on my own terms. "Those are all reasonable desires," she said, "but only you can decide if revealing your ownership serves those goals or complicates them." After careful consideration, I decided to attend the celebration without disclosing my ownership of the hotel. I would be present for my grandmother, maintain professional distance from my parents, and avoid turning the weekend into a referendum on my career choices. I instructed my staff to treat my family with the same excellent service we provided all guests, no better and no worse. As the event drew closer, my parents' demands escalated. They called the front desk multiple times daily with special requests. They complained about room assignments for extended family. They requested menu changes for the birthday dinner. My operations team kept me informed of each interaction, growing increasingly concerned about these VIP guests. Mrs. Wellington insisted that all family members have fruit baskets in their rooms, but only with seasonal berries, no melon, my assistant reported. And Mr. Wellington demanded that the staff address him as Sir Richard throughout the stay. I maintained my composure until Wednesday evening, 3 days before the event, when Jason called me directly. "I hate to bother you with this, Miss Morgan," he said, using my professional name, "but I thought you should know. The Wellington party made one of our front desk agents cry today." What happened? I asked, feeling heat rise in my neck. The gentleman insisted his room was too small for someone of his status. When Emma explained the room category he booked, he said she was clearly incompetent and demanded to speak to someone who isn't just a minimum wage failure. Emma has been with us for 2 years. She's one of our best. A familiar anger sparked inside me memories of how my parents had always treated service workers as beneath them, invisible, except when needed as targets for their displeasure. "Take care of Emma," I said firmly. "Full compensation for the rest of her shift and move her to a different section during the Wellington stay. I'll handle this personally." That night I received a text from my father confirmed our arrival for Friday at noon. "We expect appropriate accommodations for a family of our standing." I stared at the message, something shifting inside me. For years I had sought their approval, then avoided their judgment. But in that moment I realized I had built something valuable, something worth protecting, including the culture of respect we fostered among our staff. The Wellington name on the building might be coincidental, but the standard of behavior within it was intentional, my intention. I typed a simple reply. "Looking forward to seeing you." I arrived at the hotel Thursday evening, a day before my parents' scheduled check-in. The staff had been briefed that I would be present for a family event, but instructed to maintain normal protocols. I checked into a standard suite on the 20th floor deliberately, not the executive level where my family would be staying. Friday morning, I reviewed final preparations for my grandmother's birthday dinner scheduled for Saturday night. The ballroom looked stunning with elegant floral arrangements in her favorite colors and a custom menu featuring dishes from her childhood in Vermont. I had personally selected each detail, determined that whatever happened with my parents, my grandmother's celebration would be perfect. At precisely noon, a black town car pulled up to the entrance. My father emerged first, imperious in a tailored suit, followed by my mother in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I watched from the mezzanine level as they swept into the lobby, not bothering to thank the doorman who handled their luggage. "Wellington Party Presidential Suite," my father announced at the front desk, not as a request but a command. "I spoke with your manager about our arrangements." The front desk agent Michael handled them with professional courtesy. "Yes, sir. We have you all set for the presidential suite with the connecting rooms for your family members. Check-in time is officially at 3, but I can see if the suite is ready early." "It should be ready whenever we arrive," my mother said, examining her manicure. "That was made clear in our communications." I gripped the railing, reminding myself that every guest deserved respect, even these guests, my parents. Michael maintained his composure. "Let me check on that for you right away, ma'am." As he stepped away to call housekeeping, my parents surveyed the lobby with critical eyes. I knew that look, the one that sought flaws, imperfections to confirm their superiority. Instead, I saw their expressions shift subtly from disdain to reluctant approval as they took in the recent renovations, the blend of historic architecture with modern luxury that had been my personal project during the acquisition. I decided to make my presence known before other family members arrived. Taking a deep breath, I descended the grand staircase to the lobby. My mother spotted me first. Blaine. Her surprise quickly morphed into assessment eyes, scanning my simple but elegant black dress and low heels. "We didn't expect you until dinner." My father turned his expression a careful neutral. "You look, well." Coming from him, this was practically effusive praise. "Thank you," I said. "How was your trip in?" "Adequate," he replied, already dismissive, though the airport car service was subpar. "I've told your mother we should have brought our own driver." And there it was, the immediate criticism, the reflexive need to establish that whatever I might encounter in my lesser life, they experienced at a higher level. "The hotel looks acceptable," my mother offered, gesturing vaguely at the surroundings. "Though I'm surprised they call themselves 5-star with those lobby arrangements. Peonies in June, a bit common." I bit back the response that I had personally selected those peonies, that they were a specific variety bred to bloom later in the season, that they matched exactly the shade of blue in the vintage wallpaper we had painstakingly restored. "It's good to see you both," I said instead, meaning it despite everything. They were still my parents, still the people whose approval I had spent decades seeking. Michael returned with keycards. "Your suite is ready, Mr. and Mrs. Wellington. I can have someone show you up now." Finally, my father muttered, reaching for the cards. And the champagne I requested? Chilling in your suite, sir. Veuve Clicquot la Grande Dame, as specified. My father nodded curtly, the closest he came to expressing satisfaction. As the bellhop gathered their luggage, my mother turned to me. We're having drinks in our suite at 4 for immediate family before the others arrive. Wear something appropriate. That law firm look doesn't suit family functions. I had built a $100 million company from nothing, renovated historic properties across the country, created jobs for thousands of people, and still, she could only comment on my appearance. Some things never changed. I'll see you at 4, I replied, my professional smile firmly in place. Throughout the afternoon, more family members arrived. Cousins with children in tow, aunts and uncles arguing about room assignments. My brother Thomas, his wife Catherine, and their 2 perfectly dressed children. With each arrival, my parents' status as family elders was reinforced as they held court in the lobby, directing people, making introductions, establishing the hierarchy. I moved among them, greeting relatives I hadn't seen in years, deflecting questions about my career with vague answers. I work in hospitality management. I'm based in Chicago now. Business is good. Thank you for asking. At 3:30, I received a text from Jason Wellington. Party complained about noise from adjacent room, demanding to speak with general manager. I sighed and texted back, I'll handle it. When I arrived at the presidential suite, my father was berating a young staff member in the hallway. This is completely unacceptable. We are paying premium rates for quiet and privacy. If you can't manage basic guest needs, perhaps we should speak to the ownership about your competence. The irony was almost painful. Is there a problem? I asked, approaching calmly. My father turned irritation clear on his face. Blaine, this doesn't concern you. There are guests next door making a racket, and the staff seems incapable of addressing it. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, I said, turning to the staff member whose name tag read Alex. I'll help resolve this. Thank you, Miss Wellington, Alex said, with obvious relief, not realizing his mistake. My father's eyes narrowed at the staff member's familiar tone. You know my daughter. Alex looked confused. I thought. I interrupted smoothly. I checked in yesterday. I've spoken with some of the staff already. I turned back to Alex. I'll take it from here. After Alex left, my father studied me with new suspicion. You seem quite comfortable taking charge in a place you've never been. I adapt quickly, I replied, then changed the subject. Is everything else satisfactory with the suite? He waved dismissively. It's adequate. Your mother thinks the decor is trying too hard to be modern. I find the technology overly complicated, but it will serve for the weekend. Inside the suite, my mother was directing hotel staff on the placement of flowers, while my brother mixed drinks at the bar. The scene was so familiar, my mother micromanaging my father, judging Thomas, accommodating that for a moment. I was transported back to our family home, to hundreds of dinner parties and gatherings where appearances mattered more than genuine connection. Blaine, there you are, my mother called. Help your brother with the drinks. Catherine is resting before dinner and we need someone to serve. Without thinking, I found myself moving toward the bar, the old pattern of obedience still powerful. Then I stopped. I was not a child anymore, not a subordinate in the Wellington family hierarchy. I was a grown woman, a successful business owner, and currently, though they didn't know it, their host. Actually, that's what the hotel staff is for, I said pleasantly. Why don't we all relax before everyone arrives? My mother looked shocked at my refusal, but before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. The first wave of extended family had arrived for drinks, saving me from immediate confrontation. The next few hours passed in a blur of forced smiles and small talk. I answered the usual questions about my love life, non-existent, my career prospects better than anyone realized, and my plans to settle down not on anyone else's timeline. Through it all, I maintained my composure, even as I noticed my parents steering important family members away from me, minimizing my presence. Blaine is still finding her way, I overheard my mother telling my aunt. You know how some people take longer to mature. By 7 o'clock, the gathering had moved to a private dining room I had reserved months ago, though my parents believed it was their arrangement. Dinner was a formal affair with assigned seating. Unsurprisingly, I was placed at the far end of the table from my parents and grandmother, between 2 second cousins I barely knew. Throughout the meal, my father dominated conversation, sharing stories of Thomas's accomplishments and his own business ventures. When dessert arrived, he stood to make a toast about family legacy and the Wellington name. I sat quietly sipping my water, a familiar invisibility settling over me. After dinner, as guests mingled over coffee, my father approached me for the first time that evening. "Your grandmother has been asking about you," he said. "She's disappointed you haven't made time to speak with her." The unfairness of this statement, when they had deliberately seated me far from her, made me briefly speechless. "I'll go to her now," I finally managed. "Actually," he said, blocking my path slightly, "your mother and I think it's best if you make an early night of it. The family hasn't seen each other in years, and your situation creates unnecessary questions." "My situation," I repeated. "Your lifestyle choices," he clarified, voice lowered. "The hotel work, the continued singleness. Your grandmother is turning 90. She doesn't need to worry about your unconventional decisions." I stared at him, this man who had helped create me, but had never really seen me. "Are you asking me to leave my grandmother's birthday celebration?" "I'm telling you what's best for the family," he corrected. "There's a brunch tomorrow before the main event. You can see her then briefly." I looked past him to where my grandmother sat, elegant in blue silk, surrounded by family but looking somehow alone. She caught my eye and smiled warmly, lifting a hand in greeting. I started to move toward her, but my father stepped deliberately into my path. "Blaine," he said, his voice, "the one that had brokered billion-dollar deals and crushed corporate opposition, don't make a scene." Something inside me, something that had been bending and accommodating for 32 years, finally broke. "Excuse me," I said, stepping around him. He caught my arm. "We've allowed you to attend as a courtesy. Don't push it." Aloud, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "In what capacity are you allowing me anything in this hotel?" His expression darkened. "This is a family event that we are hosting. Your presence is at our discretion." I looked around at the private dining room with its perfect lighting, the custom menu I had created, the staff I had personally trained, all orchestrated by my company, paid for on my parents' credit card, but fundamentally mine in a way they couldn't begin to comprehend. "I think you've confused some things," I said. My father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me with finality. "This conversation is over. We expect you to respect our wishes." As he walked away to take his call, my mother approached, social smile firmly in place. "Your father spoke to you." "He did." "Then we're clear." She patted my arm as if I were a child. "It's for the best, darling. Family image and all that." 20 minutes later, as I sat alone at the hotel bar contemplating my next move, my phone buzzed with a text message from my father. "You're not welcome in our 5-star hotel. We've made our position clear. Respect our wishes and depart. Your grandmother will understand your absence." I stared at the message, a lifetime of similar dismissals flashing through my mind. All the times they had made me feel small, unwanted, insufficient. All the ways they had tried to force me into their definition of success while dismissing my actual achievements. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I was not that desperate for approval child anymore. I was Blaine Wellington, CEO of Luminary Holdings, owner of 15 luxury properties, including the very hotel in which they were staying. This was my house, not theirs. I smiled and picked up my phone, calling hotel security. "This is Blaine Morgan," I said, using my professional name. "Please revoke the Wellington family's VIP access effective immediately. Standard guest protocols only going forward." "Yes, Miss Morgan," the security director replied. "Anything else?" I thought for a moment. "Please ensure my grandmother Elizabeth Wellington maintains full access and receives every courtesy. The rest of the party returns to standard guest status." Then I sent a simple text to my father. "Enjoy your evening." At precisely midnight, as I sat in my office reviewing security footage, I watched my parents attempt to enter the executive lounge for a late nightcap, only to have their keycards denied. I observed my father's indignation, my mother's embarrassment, the front desk's polite explanation that there must be a system error. I watched them return to their suite, only to discover their keys no longer worked there either. I saw my father's face redden as he berated the night manager who came to reprogram their cards, explaining that the system showed their VIP status had been downgraded to standard guests. And finally, I watched as they stormed to my office, directed there by the night manager, who had been instructed to reveal my position only if directly confronted. The knock on my door was more of a pounding. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened it to find my parents standing there, faces flushed with anger and confusion. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded. "Our keycards have been deactivated, and that incompetent manager claims we need to speak to someone named Blaine Morgan, who apparently owns this place." I stepped back, inviting them into the presidential office suite, with its panoramic views of Chicago's skyline and walls lined with awards and press coverage of Luminary Holdings. "That would be me," I said quietly. "Blaine Morgan is the name I use professionally, but you know me better as Blaine Wellington." They stared at me, comprehension dawning slowly. "You work here?" my mother asked, still not grasping the full situation. "No, mother," I replied, gesturing to the office, with its obvious trappings of executive power. "I own here. I own the Wellington Hotel. I own the entire Luminary Holdings Group, 15 properties across the country, including the one you're currently staying in." My father's expression shifted from confusion to calculation, the banker in him quickly reassessing the situation, and me in financial terms. "That's not possible," he said. "A hotel chain of this caliber would be valued at about $650 million at our last funding round I supplied, though we're projecting closer to $800 million by year-end." My mother sank into one of the visitor chairs, her social mask slipping. "All this time when we thought you were struggling with that little job." "I built a company," I said. "A successful one. Without the Wellington name, without family connections, without your approval." My father was examining the awards on the wall, the press clippings, the evidence of my success that he had never bothered to discover. "Why didn't you tell us?" The question was so absurd, I almost laughed. Would you have believed me? Would you have acknowledged it as real success? Or would you have found some way to dismiss it, to make it less than whatever you imagined was proper achievement? He had no answer for that. "I'm not kicking you out of the hotel," I continued. "Grandmother's birthday celebration will proceed exactly as planned, but you are no longer VIPs here. You're standard guests who will receive the same excellent service we provide to everyone. No special treatment, no extra privileges, no staff to berate when they don't anticipate your unstated desires." "This is spite," my mother said, finding her voice. "Childish revenge for perceived slights." "No," I corrected gently. "This is a boundary. You can stay and treat my staff with respect, or you can leave and find accommodation elsewhere. The choice is yours." My father, always the strategist, had moved beyond shock to adaptation. "Your company, it's impressive. Why operate under a different name? The Wellington connection could open doors." And there it was, the familiar attempt to co-opt my success to make it part of the family narrative rather than my independent achievement. Some things truly never changed. "I think I've managed to open plenty of doors on my own," I replied. "Now it's late, and we all have a celebration tomorrow. Your keys have been reprogrammed to access only your suite. Good night." As they left, still processing this revelation, I felt neither triumph nor vindication. Just a quiet certainty that I had finally taken my place in the world, not as a Wellington seeking approval, but as Blaine standing firmly on the foundation I had built myself. The morning of my grandmother's birthday dawned, bright and clear sunlight streaming through the windows of my office, where I had spent the night reviewing presentations for an upcoming investor meeting. Part of me had expected further confrontation from my parents, perhaps a midnight demand to speak with me again, but my phone had remained silent. Whether they were strategizing their response or simply processing the revelation, I couldn't know. At 10 o'clock, I received a text from the front desk. "Miss Wellington, your grandmother has arrived in the lobby." I hurried downstairs, eager to see the woman who had always been a source of unconditional love in my life. Elizabeth Wellington sat regally on a lobby sofa, dressed in a powder blue suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, every inch the family matriarch at 90. "Grandmother," I called, approaching her with open arms. "Blaine, my darling," she said, rising to embrace me. "What a beautiful hotel. Richard mentioned you worked here, but he failed to mention what an extraordinary place it is." I raised an eyebrow. Did he tell you anything else about my connection to the hotel? She patted my cheek, her eyes twinkling. Only that we should speak privately before the festivities begin. I led her to a quiet corner of the lobby lounge, ordering her favorite Earl Grey tea and lemon scones. As we settled into comfortable chairs, she took my hand in hers, her skin paper thin but her grip still strong. Now tell me everything, she said, and don't leave out a single detail about how you came to own the very hotel your father booked for my birthday. I laughed, not surprised that she had pieced together the truth. You always were too smart for any of us to fool. For the next hour, I shared my journey with her, from the internship at 16 to building Luminary Holdings. She listened intently, asking occasional questions about financing strategies and management philosophies, revealing a business acumen I hadn't known she possessed. Your grandfather would be so proud, she said when I finished. He built his first business from nothing, too, you know. Before the family money, before the Wellington name meant anything in banking circles. Your father never understood that part of his heritage. I didn't know that, I admitted. Richard prefers the narrative that the Wellingtons have always been exceptional, she said with a sigh. It's harder to acknowledge that exceptional is something you become through work, not something you're entitled to by birth. As we talked, I noticed my parents entering the lobby with Thomas and his family. They spotted us, immediately hesitating before approaching. Elizabeth, there you are, my mother said brightly, social mask firmly in place. We were concerned when you left the suite without telling anyone. I'm having tea with my granddaughter Julia, grandmother, replied calmly, catching up on her remarkable accomplishments. Did you know Blaine owns this entire hotel, and 14 others? My mother's smile remained fixed while my father cleared his throat uncomfortably. We've recently become aware of Blaine's professional situation. Professional situation, grandmother repeated dryly. What an interesting way to describe building a company valued at over $500 million. Thomas, who had been hanging back, stepped forward with a genuine smile. It's incredible, Blaine. I've been following your company's growth for years, but didn't realize you were behind all of it. His wife, Catherine, looked confused. You knew about Blaine's company? Of course, Thomas replied. The Luminary Group is one of the fastest-growing hospitality brands in the country. Their management model is being taught at business schools. The pride in my brother's voice was unmistakable, and for a moment I saw a flash of the relationship we might have had if our parents hadn't positioned us as competitors from childhood. Well, my father said, clearly trying to regain control of the situation, this is certainly a discussion for the family to have privately. Actually, I said, standing, we have a birthday celebration to prepare for. The ballroom will be ready at 6. I've arranged for family photographs at 5:30 in the garden terrace. As the day progressed, extended family members began to learn the truth about my connection to the hotel, some through direct conversations, others through whispered gossip that spread from cousin to aunt to uncle. By afternoon, I had received dozens of congratulatory messages, business cards slipped into my hand, and not a few investment inquiries from relatives suddenly interested in the hospitality industry. The family dynamics shifted visibly. Cousins who had previously dismissed me sought me out for conversation. Aunts, who had pitied my single status, now introduced me to their children as your cousin Blaine, who runs a hotel empire. The transformation in how I was perceived was both validating and vaguely amusing. My parents responded to this shift with classic Wellington adaptation. Rather than fighting the new narrative, they began to incorporate it into their own, a strategy I had seen my father use in business countless times. Blaine always had an entrepreneurial spirit, I overheard my mother telling my aunt. We encouraged her to forge her own path even when it wasn't conventional. I might have been angered by this rewriting of history if I hadn't expected it. The Wellington way was never to admit defeat but to reframe the story until victory emerged. The birthday celebration itself was everything I had hoped for my grandmother. The ballroom glowed with soft lighting tables adorned with arrangements of her favorite flowers. The menu featured sophisticated versions of foods from her childhood, and a string quartet played music from the era of her youth. She sat at the center table surrounded by 3 generations of family beaming with genuine delight. During dessert, my father rose to give a toast. As he spoke about family legacy and Wellington values, I noticed a subtle change in his rhetoric. Where previously such speeches had focused exclusively on financial success and social standing, he now included references to innovation independence and forging new paths while honoring tradition. It was perhaps the closest thing to acknowledgement I would ever receive from him. After the formal celebration ended and guests began to depart, my father approached me at the bar where I was speaking with the event coordinator. "A word, Blaine," he requested, gesturing to a quiet corner. I excused myself and followed him, mentally preparing for whatever strategy he had developed to address our new reality. "The event was impeccable," he began, surprising me with genuine praise. "Your grandmother is thrilled." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. He seemed uncomfortable, a state I had rarely witnessed in Richard Wellington, master of boardrooms and banking negotiations. "I've been reviewing Luminary Holdings' public financials this afternoon. Your growth metrics are exceptional. The employee retention rates are particularly impressive." This was not the conversation I had expected. My father was speaking to me as he might to a respected business associate, not as the daughter he had dismissed for decades. "We've prioritized creating a positive work environment," I said. "It translates to better guest experiences and stronger financial performance." He nodded thoughtfully. "A progressive approach, but the numbers support your methodology." He paused, then added more quietly, "Your grandfather would have approached business similarly. He believed in investing in people first." Coming from my father, this was nearly seismic acknowledgement. Not quite an apology for years of dismissal, but a recognition that my path had merit on its own terms. "I'd like to hear more about your expansion plans sometime," he continued. "Perhaps during a proper business lunch when we return to Connecticut." I recognized the offer for what it was. Not a full reconciliation, but a path toward a new type of relationship, one based on professional respect, if not parental understanding. "I'd be open to that," I replied carefully. Later that evening, as guests returned to their rooms and staff began the cleanup, my mother found me on the rooftop terrace looking out over the Chicago skyline. "You've done well for yourself," she said, standing beside me. "The hotel is beautiful." "Thank you," I said, waiting for the qualifier that usually followed her rare compliments. Instead, she asked, "Are you happy, Blaine?" The question was so unexpected, so uncharacteristic of our typical interactions, that I turned to study her face, wondering about her motivation. "I am," I answered truthfully. "I built something I'm proud of. I work with people I respect and who respect me in return. I make decisions based on my own values, not others' expectations." She nodded slowly, her gaze on the distant lights. "I've spent my life concerned with how things appear rather than how they are." She glanced at me. "It's too late for me to change, but not too late to recognize the cost of that approach." We stood in silence for several moments, a more comfortable quiet than I could remember sharing with my mother in years. "I won't suddenly become the mother you deserved," she finally said. "But I am proud of what you've accomplished, even if I don't fully understand it." It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was perhaps the most honest conversation we had ever had. The rest of the weekend passed with a tentative new family dynamic emerging. My parents continued to be my parents, critical and status-conscious, but with a new layer of restraint in how they addressed me. I remained myself, neither seeking their approval nor rejecting their overtures. We had established, if not warmth, at least a mutual recognition of each other's reality. 1 year later, I hosted a family dinner at Luminary's newest property, a restored mansion turned boutique hotel in Boston's historic district. My parents attended, as did Thomas and his family and a few close relatives. My father asked informed questions about the renovation process. My mother complimented the design elements without searching for flaws. Thomas and I discussed potential collaboration between his financial expertise and my hospitality experience. We were not suddenly a perfect family. Years of patterns don't dissolve with a single revelation. But we were learning to interact as adults with separate lives and achievements connected by blood, but not defined by identical values. The greatest change was within myself. I no longer measured my worth against their assessment. I no longer felt the sting of their criticism or the desperation for their approval. I had built a life that aligned with my own definition of success, and in doing so had finally given myself permission to be fully, unapologetically Blaine. Perhaps that's the most important lesson from my journey. No one else can grant you the authority to define your own path. Not parents, not family, not society. The permission to build the life you want must come from within. Success isn't proving others wrong, it's proving yourself right. I still run Luminary Holdings, now expanded to 23 properties across the country. I still believe in creating spaces where both guests and employees feel valued. And I still occasionally receive critical texts from my parents about my life choices. But now those messages no longer have the power to diminish me. I built not just a business, but a sense of home for myself, one based on authenticity rather than appearance. And in the end, that has made all the difference. What moments in your own life have required you to choose your own path against others' expectations? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family to protect your own growth? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the most powerful approval you'll ever receive is the kind you give yourself.